I would like to call this meeting of the Yosemite Community College District Board of Trustees for Wednesday, November 14, 2018 into session. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin. And just if I could all get you to, when you have a moment, take time to think about all those victims in our wildfires that are going on in the state, especially our community colleges that have been impacted by those wildfires. There's quite a few, and it's not only those communities, but the students they serve. So just keep them in your thoughts and prayers. Report out from closed session, item 3.2. We have nothing to report out. So I'll then move on to 3.3, approval of the minutes of the October 10th, 2018 Board of Trustees regular meeting. Give everyone a few moments to look those over, and I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I move we approve those minutes.
Okay, motion by trustee Ann DiMartini. Is there a second? Second by trustee Abe Rojas. Any further comments, questions? Seeing or hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Move on now to item 3.4, approval of the minutes of the November 7th, 2018 Board of Trustees special meeting. Again, give everyone a moment to look those over and then entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Moved by trustee Abe Rojas. Is there a second? Second by trustee Tom Hallinan. Any further comments, questions, inquiries? Seeing or hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item 3.5, public comment. Okay, there's no one here from the public, but I would like to recognize what appears to be, once certified, our newest trustees to the Yosemite Community College District Board of Trustees, which I think are all here this evening. We have Nancy Hinton, who will be taking over for Don Viss. We have Marjorie Bulkin, who will be taking over for Lynn Martin. And we have Antonio Aguilar, who currently is on the Keys Board and will be taking over Tom Hallinan's position. So thank you all for being here this evening. I think it shows your interest and your commitment to serve the college and the students. So thank you very much. So no public comment. We'll move on now to the Board Finance Committee report. The Board Finance Committee did not meet, so there will be no report out. Moving on now to item 4.2, Board Policy Committee report, and I'll turn this over to trustee DiMartini.
Thank you, Chair Garrett. This committee met on Tuesday because Monday was a holiday. We had very little to look over in the second reading. We recommend no changes tonight to the board when we get there. But we were able to have an excellent discussion on due process, and the group pretty much finalized what we thought we could do in due process related to providing a minimum, which is more than currently exists, for all members of the YCCD community. But we were restricted by not wanting to increase the financial costs. But we came up with a very nice suggestion. It will go to the attorney first to see if there's something we didn't consider, and then we will put it into the entire normal process for policies and procedures. But I'm very excited really about the progress, that slow but finally making it. So that's that.
Okay. Any of the other members? Lynn, Leslie, any comment? It's your last time here, Lynn.
Our chair does very well with her report.
Perfect answer. Perfect. Didn't even have to phone a friend on that one. That
No.
was good. So, I would just like to comment, I appreciate all the work that the policy committee has done with respect to due process. This is something that this board is very interested in. has been focused on, and also Alan McKissick's participation in that as well. So I want to thank the committee for that. We'll move on now to item 5.1, presentation, Yosemite Community College District Draft Total Cost of Ownership Facilities Plan.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Okay. So we have before you tonight, as an informational item, the draft total cost of ownership plan for facilities. And I just want to take a couple of moments before I turn it over to our facilities director, Judy Lanchester, and we also have our consultant, Bruce Rich from WSP here this evening. So the TCO was developed as a collaborative document. So we were initially, as you know, or perhaps you know, required, or it was required in the accreditation document that we develop a TCO. And we had one of the accrediting teams suggested a TCO document that we could look at and use as a template. We had college presidents who also suggested a couple of documents. And then we looked up some on the internet. So fiscal services staff, Judy, and our controller, really, Sarah, went through a lot of documents to arrive at something. And then what we've been doing is we've been bringing it to various meetings, including, you know, the usual cabinet and district administrative council, but also district council, to keep people updated on the progress. So tonight we do have a draft, and what I want to make clear about this is that this is a draft document. It will have recommendations in it. However, no decisions are made by this document. It's meant to be informational only. The decisions will be made in a different process. We are working on developing the district fiscal advisory committee, and that will be the committee where resources, you know, these facilities questions will be considered within the context of all of the district needs and all of the district resources. So we can't make decisions in a vacuum. And so that will be a participatory governance body. And so again, the decisions aren't made in this document. This is informational that we can then use in that decision-making process. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Judy and Mr. Rich. Thank you.
Judy, for the purpose of maybe people that don't know the acronym, Total Cost of Ownership, TCO.
Correct. And thank you, Abe, for that. Total cost of ownership is referred to inside of the slide presentation and also throughout the TCO plan as TCO. So it's a good idea to know that acronym, as well as the last point in this first slide, which is APA. APA was formerly known as the Association of Physical Plant Administrators. They are just currently known as APA. They developed a set of key benchmarks for us to take a look at our performance standards next to our peer review groups. So it's a good model for us to go over, and Bruce is going to go and take us through the slide presentation, and I will finish up with how we've completed this process and where we're going next. And we have a clicker here.
I have a clicker.
You do.
Okay. A little technical training here, right?
There we go. It's on. There you
Okay.
go.
So this should make it go forward.
There we go.
Good evening. Let me give you a broad overview of total cost of ownership. It basically talks about what an owner would spend from beginning of planning through operation, renovations, and then finally removal of a facility over a 40-year period. We take a look at those three steps, basically. The first step, planning and construction, about 10 to 15% of the total cost of ownership. Annual cost, 40 to 50%, depending on how things go. That last piece, this long-term renovation program, could be another 30 to 40%. This is what you invest over time to maintain your building's functionality. energy use, things like that. And we'll talk in more detail about that. We'll talk about 6 topics that came out of this study. Basically, fact-finding. First of all, you have an excess in lecture and office space across both campuses. Your custodial staffing is lower than APA guidelines to reach the level of service or level of care that is sort of an average. Your maintenance and ground staffing, however, matches expectations with staffing. The annual operations cost per square foot is equal or pretty close to equal in both campuses per square foot. Both campuses use energy wisely, better than national averages. And lastly, your investment in buildings over the long period, over the last 10 years, matches national recommendations of keeping your buildings functional and useful. So first of all, space usage. We took a look at the allocation of space that you had 10 years ago and where you had last year. And what we see here is your classroom space doesn't match your usage of that space. The state uses the term capacity to load ratio. How much space do you have? How many students enrolled, and how do they use those spaces? You have about twice as much classroom or lecture space at both campuses than right now your student population would support. Now, what I've seen in other campuses, it comes from a couple reasons. You plan buildings 5, 10 years out. You make projections of your student enrollment at that same time. If you don't make those enrollment goals, you've overbuilt. Also, what happens is, as you're planning these things, you're building these things, somebody wants to hang on to that building that we used so long, it really worked okay for me, but it's outdated. So you have 2 reasons that you usually get out of sync with that. Same thing happens with offices. Somebody likes their space in this particular building. We just don't want to take it away. I'll talk a little bit. You can see on your laboratory space, computer labs, science labs, much closer to where student use and space available are pretty close. So this is the APA standards. So if we took a look at this level 3, which is kind of the average, and by the way, these staffing numbers came from, as Judy talked about, facilities people looking at how long it took to do very minute operations in the cleaning or maintaining. So we got a time and motion study, and what we're doing is putting data to match expectations. If you want to have level 3, which is called casual inattention, as a custodial, which basically is the carpets are clean, but if you look closely, you know, there's a couple spots here and there. Level 4, which is a little bit worse, is called moderate dinginess. So if you look at the same carpet, you get this sense that it's not really clean. So these are the descriptions, and then the staffing to do that are these time and motion studies. So basically what it says is maintenance, grounds at both campuses pretty well match this expectation of right in the middle. Your custodial numbers are a little lower to meet this expectation of average, if you will. Annual operating costs. So three elements to that. Staff, obviously, is the biggest piece of that. Some 60% of your annual costs are staffing costs. This is complete fringes, benefits, plus salary. The other big piece, of course, is utilities. About 30% utility cost. And then this M&O expense are these replacement parts, also subcontracts to repair elevators, the things that happen, maybe not with your own staff. You can see here this $8.31 per square foot. Now, what does that mean? Other than they're both the same. If you add more space, you ought to think about adding dollars to your general budget, because this is what we see right now it takes for you to operate these facilities. Or conversely, if you take space out of your inventory, close it, remove it. Those are the sort of mostly savings you'll see in your annual operating budget. So we looked a little bit at utility costs. And what we saw was, again, fairly close, Modesto being higher. A couple reasons. Water being much more expensive here in Modesto, and the grass lawn areas you have to maintain. But more importantly, you operate the facilities here many more hours a week than you do at Columbia. So it takes more energy to operate the hours that you do here. So that's the really biggest difference between the two. We took a look at energy use intensity, electric, gas primarily, as an energy usage, and then divided by the square foot. And what we see here is that both campuses are operating below the national average. Part of that, of course, is our climate. But on the other hand, you know, we air condition here a lot more than we do in other parts of the country. So in generally, on average, you're doing very well with energy use. That's a real accolade. It's another reason to try to improve your buildings, to improve your energy use, and remove those buildings sometimes that you just can't bring up to energy standards. The other piece then is this long-term energy use. So this is a look at how you invested your bond dollars over the last 10 years or so. What we see here is this, it says MJC renovation and Columbia renovation. So this is the reinvestment in your buildings without removing them. This is things like replacing major air handling units, reconfiguring the space for a new class, adding data services, upgrading your life safety systems or ADA improvements. All of these things that are not a project to, you know, build something new, but reinvesting in these buildings. If we take a look at how you invested those dollars over this 10-year period, in addition to your bond funds, you had some scheduled maintenance dollars that came from the state, Prop 39, which was an energy savings. So you're at 1.7 to 2.1. So if we take a look overall, so looking at national averages, this is the APPA national averages, you're right in line with that. One that sort of sticks out here is the custodial cost per gross square foot. And California is a big part of that indicator. The other three, of course, are your space indicators, which we talked about earlier. So that's a summary of what's in the report. I'll turn it back to Judy for her summary.
Sir. Well, the closing of this is the TCO benefits, and basically what we learned during this process is that it's a valuable tool in the planning process for the care of our district facilities. Moving forward, project development, it provides a proactive, data-driven process that we may be able to apply to future building projects or future decision-making with regards to our facilities. It provides us the annual cost management of our utilities, our staffing costs, and also our maintenance and operation expenses. The long-term management, it gives us the tools to support the renovation and replacement of existing facilities and to view that through a lens in this snapshot of time for the cost and the true cost of these facilities. It also gives us the opportunity to make these decisions in a shared governance process. At the end of this, in Section 6, is provided some suggestions for us to move forward with that decision making. But again, this is where it will move us into the future for these future improvements on our projects and our buildings. Are there any questions of myself or Bruce or Susan?
Any questions?
Well, I have not so much a question, but in the information that was given to the board, I just want to point out that according to this study, that it says moving forward, YCCD would need to invest $6 to $13 million annually to meet this standard.
That's correct.
And I think that's something that kind of wasn't,
Anticipated?
well, maybe not anticipated, but never thought about. I never
Very
thought about.
correct.
So-
A lot of people don't, but some of the things we can talk about for that from that perspective, so some ideas for the future is, do we operate all our facilities all the time? do we take a look at that from that perspective so that maybe the energy savings and also the amount of time that people put into maintaining these, do we do that? Looking forward, do we look at the possibility of maybe looking at some existing space that's not heavily utilized? That's one of the reasons why we listed those building summaries in the back and gave you some tools to take a look at and possibly moving forward, how we might evaluate those facilities. But yes, it was quite surprising to all of us. Yeah.
Well, I would just like to say that if anybody has any questions about our facilities district-wide, Judy is more than prepared, her and her staff, to answer all of your questions. I've met with her. It is sort of a sticker shock when she starts going all over this, or going over this stuff. But I think it stresses the importance that at some point, and this document will help us, that we do need to start thinking about and start planning for the future, because it is a considerable amount of money when you look at the two colleges, with both Columbia and obviously MJC is a bigger piece of this, but it is a lot of money. And so I think Judy has well positioned us, her and her staff, to make those plans for the future. So thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, I have an observation. I commend you for doing this because the board is interested in cost efficiency. And you can't be efficient if you don't know what your numbers are. So this gives us a tool to do a better job with our funds. I have one observation, and that is we're using bond money for routine maintenance in some cases. Painting buildings, for example. There are other instances where we're using bond money for ongoing maintenance. And the problem with that is that bond money is borrowed money, and we're paying back $3 for every dollar we we borrow on Measure E. So now we're paying 3 times for routine maintenance, which we should be paying for in cash in our annual budget. The other thing is, if we take, we pay that expenditure out of bond money, we free up regular operational funds, and that goes into a pool. And if we build that up, staff sees that money and says, we want it. And sometimes they get it. So now, in effect, we're paying salaries with money that we borrowed, and we're paying back $3 for $1. So I think the takeaway is we need to be careful about routine maintenance and pay cash for that, and use bond money for capital expenditures. Am I right?
Yes, you are right. Anytime that we take a look at the allocations for bonds or for scheduled maintenance money, we want to make sure that we use them in the right category. This painting projects that occurred provide the longevity of 20 years exterior painting, so that's why those scheduled maintenance type costs, plus the ability for the district to keep up with a $3 to $6 million allocation from scheduled maintenance. The state of California is not providing those amounts of funds for us. So you look at the overall health of your campus and the health of your buildings, and one of the things that you do when you're planning is to make sure that your exteriors and your roofs are buttoned up as much as possible so you can protect the contents of your buildings. So I do agree with you, but I also wanted to provide you that information that it does provide longevity.
Years ago, I was on an elementary board, and the state had a program that required you to have a 10-year maintenance program, and if you did that, they would pay for half of it. Is that still in force?
No, well, it may be at different colleges, like UC systems are also maybe K through 12, but in the community college system, we have a 5-year scheduled maintenance plan that we do submit annually to the state of California. And then based upon our FTESs, and I'm going to glance at Susan here for verification, that based on that FTESs, we are afforded an allocation that is a pocket of money for equipment for the colleges as well as scheduled maintenance. And I'll pause for Susan.
And that pot of money changes annually, and it has become the balancer. So the state funds everything they need to fund. They don't want to add to ongoing funding. They put the money in there. So we had some really high years, but it's been much less, in the past, last year and this year. This year, I think we got 400-something thousand, and so it's 200,000 to maintenance and 200,000 to instructional equipment.
So if we have that pot of money, Susan, why are we using bond money to paint buildings?
Because $200,000 a year will not keep two campuses' scheduled maintenance going. And I would say that because the scheduled maintenance dollars have been so variable, and during the downturn they were non-existent, and when budgets get cut, the first thing that gets cut is scheduled maintenance from the budget, right? So what some districts have done is when they've gone out for a bond, they've actually included an item called small capital projects, and it's designed to be over a time period, 15, 20 years, and it is designed to help districts keep up the maintenance on their facilities.
Well, do you agree that it would be cheaper to pay cash than to borrow money?
I do agree it would be cheaper to pay cash. However, I've also seen in many years districts simply can't afford to pay cash. And so that's been the problem. 1 to 2% of our total cost of replacement is, I believe, $3 to $6 million per year. So that would have to come off right off the top of our budget. And, that hasn't been the case in the past, so that would be a substantive change moving forward. So again, that's why we didn't want to make any decisions in this document. It's not appropriate. The needs and have to be taken into account with all the other needs and resources available through a different process, and we will be looking at that very carefully.
Good, thank you.
To follow up on my former history teacher's questions there, so this, when we say maintenance, we're talking about painting projects, not avoiding the moderate dinginess. So that's what makes it all appropriate.
Maintenance is different than custodial or ground.
Right. I just wanted to make sure, when we call it maintenance, it's really more structural.
Scheduled maintenance
Scheduled
really is mostly roofs, HVAC replacements, track replacements. It's anything that is of a large scale that cannot be done in-house.
You cannot pay any sort of salaries out of it.
Just for anybody who might be listening.
Yeah.
Because it's
Thank you, Tom, much appreciated.
our own language, right?
I think the follow-up question for Trustee Viss is comments are, what do we do going forward now that the bond is coming to a close? That's the big question right there. So thank you, Don. Any other questions? Hey, Judy, thank you very much. We'll move on now to item 5.2, Association Report, Student Senate Activity Reports.
Good evening, members of the board. We started the month of November by celebrating the Day of the Dead on November 1st. ASMGC members made an altar a few days in advance for the students to add pictures of deceased family members. On November 7th, ASMGC members helped with the setup of the Ron Tigley Veterans Resource Center ceremony and the Veterans Education Day event. It was very meaningful to hear great stories of Mr. Tingley. I learned he was a very much admired individual. Also, during the event, information tables were set up by different branches of military and resources for interested students. Moreover, on November 7th, ASMGC members attended the Erica Ormsby's event on West Campus. During the event, she talked about her book, I'm Happy, Healthy, Free, and answered audience questions. It was very inspiring. On November 8th, ASMGC members held a fall semester town hall. We would like to thank you to our interim president, Steve Collins, for taking the time to attend and answer students' questions and address their concerns regarding a possible faculty strike. We have also had 7 of our Flow free lunch on Wednesday events this semester and have fed over 3,500 students through this event. That's all for my report. Any questions?
Any questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I, for one, being at the Ron Tingley event, I appreciated all the work that the students did. It was very nice, so thank you very much. And do we have a Columbia, yes, we have a Columbia report.
Good evening. Some of you I don't think I've met. My name is Shalom Fletcher, and I am the student body president of Columbia College. I'm very honored to be here tonight to represent the students. We have good news to report. The Associated students have donated $16,000 for hydration stations around the campus that they can refill their water and with their water bottles, and they are ADA compliant. Now we've turned our focus to the annual Christmas giving tree, which provides gifts to the children attending Columbia's daycare center and their siblings, I think under 8 years old. We're also supporting the annual pajama drive with all pajamas going to a nonprofit organization known as Grandma's House. We're also anticipating the arrival of Santa and his elves at our annual children's Christmas party on December 5th, where we'll provide snacks, games, and gifts to the children. Closing out the semester, we are once again hosting our biannual cram night on November 29th from 6 to 9 p.m. in the library to give students a chance to meet with their professors and AAC tutors to prepare for their finals. Lastly, we are looking forward to our role in In-Service Day, where we will present a small skit focused on student leadership. Any questions?
Any questions? No, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move on now to faculty representative to the board, Alan McKissick.
Before my report, I want to offer some thank yous to Darren Garrett for his remarks to the MJC Academic Senate. They were very well received. I also want to thank the Board Policy Committee for its extensive work on due process, and I would add Chancellor Young to those thanks. But as to the committee, not just for that work, I believe the Policy Committee is a model of due diligence and engagement with constituencies. Having said that, my report will be comprised of reading Emergency Resolution FL18A, Unfair Labor Practices Strike Declaration. This is from the YFA. Whereas the Yosemite Community College District has engaged in numerous unfair labor practices that denigrate YFA's statutory rights and grossly interfere with its ability to represent its unit members and engage in bilateral negotiations. Whereas the district agendized board resolutions threatening to unlawfully terminate and discipline faculty engaging in protected activity, including YFA-called labor actions. This threat of terminating faculty for engaging in protected activity has and continues to have a chilling effect on faculty. Whereas, at its October 10th meeting, the board held that although the resolutions would not be considered at that meeting, the district informed YFA it would pass new emergency strike resolutions if YFA were to implement its strike vote, which continues its unlawful chilling effect on faculty. Whereas, after chilling faculty participation in a strike by making unlawful threats against YFA and faculty, the district has now totally repudiated its bargaining obligations by making a November 9, 2018 regressive bargaining proposal to YFA that, one, offers less money on a per-year basis than its last, best, and final offer, and two, includes new demands for takeaways, including the elimination of the negotiated cohort and promise for median compensation. Whereas, the YFA has done everything possible to negotiate with the district in good faith, including holding over 3 years of negotiation sessions, 2 mediation sessions, a mediation session at fact-finding for over 17 hours, and a negotiation session between legal counsel after fact-finding. But despite these efforts, the district continues to negotiate in bad faith, and that no progress is possible as long as the district continues to operate in bad faith. Whereas, the district's unlawful threats against faculty coupled with its recent bad faith bargaining show a total disregard for YFA's statutory rights, and therefore, as a last resort, the YFA must respond to these provocations by calling for an unfair labor practices strike. On Friday, November 16, 2018, YFA will hold an all-member meeting and call for emergency authorization from its membership to hold a 2-day unfair labor strike this semester on dates to be announced at the Friday meeting to respond to the district's unfair labor practices. Approved by the YFA Executive Board on November 13th, 2018.
Yeah, we have anything else, Alan?
Nothing to add.
Okay. We'll move on now to academic senate activity reports. I know I was told Curtis Martin is not here. I do not see the academic senate president from Columbia here either. So unless, Alan, have you heard anything? Nope. Okay.
They will not be attending.
Okay. So I know LTAC has no report. I have not heard anything from YFA. I think, Alan, you read in what their comments were for this evening, correct?
Yes, I believe I have.
Okay, so no YFA report. The California School Employees Association report. Sherry?
First of all, I'd like to thank Trustee Don Viss, Lynn Martin, and Tom Hallinan for your service over the years. CSEA has found to work with you guys very good relationship, and I want to wish you all the luck in your next endeavors. So thank you for your service. CSEA is currently involved in a couple fundraisers that we are doing. We are selling poinsettias and See's candy, and this is to raise money for our student scholarships. So I wanted to let you guys know we're doing that. Last month, Joey Partridge up at Columbia College delivered the president's message to the board. It was an emotional speech, and I received a lot of inquiries after his presentation about what he had to say and the emotions that were felt when he was speaking. You know, the atmosphere has changed, and we all know that. And we all are expecting good results. We're all hoping for good results, but classified is feeling the strain just as much. I just wanted to let you know that it's getting harder and harder for classified to get away from their work sites, to get away from the ability to serve on selection committees due to workload issues and just the atmosphere right now, which really kind of concerns me. I get questions all the time or answers from people that, oh, I can't serve because my manager won't support me. And I don't necessarily know that it's always the manager that won't support it. I believe that a lot of times the managers can't afford to let the classified go away from their desk to serve because of the workload issues and what is needed at the time. So my message this month in our newsletter to my membership was on leadership. And I'd like to just read a few things from my newsletter. Leadership. The dictionary defines leadership as the action of leading a group of people or an organization and the state or position of being a leader. Over this last summer, we experienced the retirement of our CSEA president, Debbie Partridge. At that time, I was put in as I was first VP. CSEA has had the rare opportunity of having some great leadership over many, many years. We've had some wonderful presidents and support from their executive team. We currently have some talk of retirement on the current exec board, and we want to make sure that CSEA continues to have a strong leadership and a good rapport with YCCD district. We just have gotten past the recent voting for a lot of positions in our state capital, which may or may not leave us with some uncertainties on what the state will hand down to us.
We are currently navigating uncharted waters with the unsettled YFA contract, along with the gaps in our own leadership at the college and the district. This month in November, at our annual meeting will be the time for nominations for our classified professionals to become on the executive board. And like I said, it's getting harder and harder for people to participate. So I'm kind of here asking that you as a board and the executive cabinet be conscious of the tremendous dedication that the classified professionals that serve this institution and valuing their time with the encouragement from all management to allow classified the ability to serve not only in CSEA, but also in the important committees that are needed on this campus. You know, Darren, thank you for reminding us of the fires. There is a lot of things that are going on right now, and we, of all people, should be thankful for what we have. So I do want to thank you. I do want to tell you, I hope everybody has a very happy Thanksgiving. I think we should be counting our blessings every single day because we have a lot to be thankful for. And in all my messages to my constituents, I always end with, as we are all better together. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. Any questions for Sherry? Oh, thank you again, Sherry. Okay, we'll move on now to item 5.3, activities and announcements, Columbia College. So Dr. Santanu.
Good evening, Board of Trustees. Good evening, colleagues. We are moving into the final leg of the semester. Students are getting ready for their finals. Faculty, staff, and administrators are focused on the typical end of semester activities. There has been several events, activities around the campus since my last report. First off, what started with a request to show a film on campus has morphed into the development of a film series, or the potential of a film series. There was a request to show the film RGB on campus. The film was shown at local high schools and drew a large audience. The associated students took the lead to organize the showing of the film. And based on the feedback and success from showing the film on campus, there is a plan to continue show films of interest to young adults that encourage participation in social issues and improve social awareness. Thank you, Professor Erin Nagel and ASCC President Shalom for taking the lead. I attended the Columbia College Jazz Series and Big Band featuring Barbara Morrison that was held in Dogwood Theater on November 3rd and 4th, prior Saturday and Sunday. This is the 19th straight year that Barbara Morrison, a well-known jazz artist from Hollywood, participated in our festival. And she comes to our campus free of cost to us. She just comes because she loves the campus. Music professor Dr. Rod Harris has provided leadership to the big band that attracts local talents to our music program, engages the community, and provides a platform for our students to share the stage with established artists from the field. If you have not had a chance to attend one of the programs, I strongly recommend attending one in future. You will be delighted with the professionalism and quality of performance. Thank you, Dr. Harris. I attended the board meeting of Central Valley Higher Education Consortium, shortened form CVHEC, in the late October. I presented the idea of forming an alliance of the Central Valley institutions, that the coalition includes all community colleges from Bakersfield to Stockton, including CSU Stanislaus and UC Merced, and meet with the industries in the Bay Area with a proposal to develop programs that will train workforce needed in the future. We talked about creating pathways in the high-tech areas such as cybersecurity, social media marketing, and gaming industry. The consortium plans to meet with the next governor of the state in its January meeting to discuss the plans and seek his support. The president of Adventist Health visited our campus. We are exploring the possibility of creating a health sector pathway for our students in collaboration with Adventist Health and Mother-Lode Job Training. A meeting is scheduled for December 19, where we will discuss the feasibility and explore options to operationalize the strategy. Finally, Trustees Martin, Viz and Hallinan, thank you for the opportunity to work with you. I have had very limited time to interact with you. I appreciate your leadership, vision, and commitment to YCCD. That concludes my report.
Dr. Santanu, thank you very much. Any questions? All right, thank you again. And we'll move on now to item 5.4, the MJC president, Steve Collins. You notice I said president and not interim president. So-
Thank you, Garrett. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thankfully, Santanu has mentioned one of the items I was going to mention is the Central Valley HEC Conference. We won't duplicate that. There's been some discussion of the Ron Tingley dedication service, which was a very special event. I won't have to go over that. So I just want to touch on two things tonight. One is the fact that on Saturday, the MJC Pirates will be playing the City College of San Francisco football team for what amounts to the championship of Northern California. And we point to that with a great pride and a sense of accomplishment on the part of Coach Stivers and his superb players, who, by the way, represent this institution in public as well as they hit hard on the field. I've seen them in two different occasions, and they always speak clearly and with affection for this institution. So that's very nice. I want to spend the rest of my remarks talking about what I think was probably the most successful public event I've ever seen at Modesto Junior College. It was one that reached out to an enormous range of constituencies and I think did a great deal of good. And that was the visit of Dr. Temple Grandin to MJC on November 6th and 7th. It was just an amazing event, stretched out over those 2 days. On the 6th, Dr. Grandin was out at the Ag Pavilion, where 700 of our citizens came to hear her discuss the field that brought her into prominence, and that's animal behavior. More than half the livestock in this country goes through facilities that were designed, in large part according to the ideas of Dr. Grandin, an amazingly influential member of the agriculture industry and community. The next day, Dr. Grandin was again at the Ag Pavilion, but this time she was meeting with 900 high school students in this area who came to learn from her about the animal care that they wanted to devote their lives to. That's an amazing number of students to serve in one setting. And then finally, on the night of November 7th, Dr. Grandin spoke at the MJC auditorium. That event, by the way, set the record for the speed of sellout of that house. That house was sold out in 5 days once Dr. Grandin's appearance was announced. There, Dr. Grandin, who is autistic, addressed how people whose brains are different can learn and how they can be taught. I've spoken since Dr. Grandin spoke that night to several parents of autistic children who were there and were moved to tears in some cases by the care and concern that she showed for them and their children. Dr. Grandin was incredibly generous with her time throughout all three of those appearances, signing books, talking to students individually, and just making herself generally available. As I said at the beginning, and I seem to say something like this every month, I've been around here for a long time, and I have never seen a more successful public event than we held on November 6th and 7th. And we owe Dean Borges and probably Bill Hobby a great debt of gratitude for making it possible for Dr. Grandin to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, President Collins. Any questions for President Collins? All right, thank you, Steve, very much. We'll move on now to item 5.5, presentation and updates from our YCCD Chancellor, Chancellor Young.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next meeting, we'll have the new trustees seated. But tonight, I'd like to take the opportunity to acknowledge the outgoing trustees. I want to thank Dr. Lynn Martin, who has served between 2010 to to 2018, Don Viss, who had served from 2010 to 2018, and Tom Hallinan, who was a provisional appointment from March to December 2018. I want to thank the three of you for your contribution to the role of the board and being the oversight body for the district. Your professionalism on the board has contributed to the board being able to accomplish its goal, whether it is a day-to-day task or whether it's a long-term goal that the board has been looking at. So tonight I want to at least be able to present you with a little token of appreciation. So if I could begin by presenting this certificate of appreciation to Trustee Helen. Next, I have a very expensive looking jewelry box to be presented to, let's see what's inside the box. Dr. Lynn Munn.
I'm in the box?
Don Viss. Like any organization, the board is only as good as its leader. Our leader this past year has been Darren Garrett. So Darren, I want to thank you for your leadership, for your visionary, forward-looking philosophy that has helped to steer the board in the right direction. Thank you.
And I'm only as good as what my fellow trustees will allow me to get away with, so that's where the boundaries are. I just want to take a moment, obviously, to thank Tom and Lynn and Don, as the Chancellor pointed out, for their service. And some of you may not know, but Don has served this community in Stanislaus County, I would probably say for most of his adult life. His children are here in the audience and probably have a better record of that than I do. But Don served with my mom on the Stanislaus County Board of Education Board for a number of years before he came to us. And he's been on elementary school boards and was a history teacher. So Don has been serving, like I said, this district probably since the day he got out of college with his teaching credential. So Don, I just wanted to give you a big shout out because you deserve it. You've given a lot, and I for one appreciate it. So thank you very much.
My second item, I'd like to share with you that the district office building, this very building that we are in, has received 2 awards for its unique design. The first one is from the it's from the Association of International Architects, the San Joaquin chapter. It is the Award of Excellence for the education category. The second one is the Outstanding Building category in the Zero Net Energy building category at the Green California Schools and Community Colleges Expo that was recently held in Pasadena. So we were able to build this building with the bond, and the awards that we just received reflect the hard work that the district team put together in sharing that vision to the architects and for the architects to be able to implement it into this unique building. So great job. Last, I'd like to share with you an update regarding the swimming pool at MJC. Really, it should be swimming pools because it's more than one. As most of you recall, there was an explosion which damaged the pool mechanical system and also damaged the adjacent buildings. And this was the result of an explosion from a compressed carbon dioxide canister during the summer. 5 buildings were closed for a period of time for safety and functionality prior to being cleaned and in some cases repaired before it was open for reoccupancy. Now, all the buildings have been reopened with the exception of the pool. Now, after a thorough review of the areas affected, the scope of repair for the pool and the men's PE building is being developed on these counts. 1, the location of the pool area and the mechanicals were reviewed for optimal safety and functionality. If something is damaged and we're going to replace them, that is a good opportunity to do a thorough review. And so we have taken this opportunity to do that. The project has been preliminarily discussed with the Department of State Architect to request a priority review. Now, when we do any construction, we have to get DSA, the Department of State Architect approval, and the district team is working on that. And we want to be sure that we are also in compliance with the American with Disability Act so that we would be able to serve our students who may have ADA needs. In planning and considering good fiscal stewardship, both the small and the large pools will be replastered at the same time as they share the same mechanical systems. And if we would do it at one time, there would be a substantial cost savings down the road. Currently, the staff from Central Services, Judy and her team, are working with the insurance company and also the Department of State Architects to solidify the scope of the project. Once the final scope has been determined, the project will move forward officially to design, the DSA, and bid, and then construction. So we appreciate the patience of the community while the pool is offline. It is not that we are slow to respond. It's just that we are responding in the manner that is required to do a thorough job of making sure that it is done right. At the same time, I know that the college has been impacted, so I want to personally thank the college, President Collins, Vice President Zalet, and Vice President Alt for helping the college find alternative facilities for the sports that are affected. And of course, again, my special thanks to our partners in the communities, whether they be high schools or community center, that have stepped up to help us during this time of need. So thank you. That concludes my report.
Okay, thank you, Chancellor Young. Any questions for the Chancellor? Okay, we'll move right into item 5.6, the bond update.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm going to start by introducing myself. I'm Ron Martin with Kitchell. I have been on this program for 13 years, but I've been able to hide in Columbia for the most of it. So some of you know me, most of you do not, but it's a pleasure. I'm proposed to be the last man standing here with Measure E, so forgive me if I'm a little nervous. Basically, we're going to show you some of the active projects that we have going right now. There are many more in design still, much smaller than previously. The first one is the backside of the Science and Community Center. This is the Great Valley Nature Lab. As some of you may have seen that it's in construction right now. It's in the dirt phases. The hills are starting to develop. The pathways are starting to develop. There's going to be a lot of plants and natural grasses and a vernal pool. This is from the 3rd floor of the science building. The greenhouse over on the left where you see the little concrete pad. And it's on schedule to be done by February 1st, hopefully. And a really diligent, good contractor out there. This is lot 208 over by El Capitan. It used to be part gravel and part asphalt. The asphalt was pretty dilapidated, and there were some big concerns for people getting injured out there. So this project is currently asphalted and going to be done by December. And the lights are going up now, so they're actually a little bit ahead of schedule. So that one's looking really good. This is a view of construction about 3 weeks ago out there at that lot. And I want to bring up Judy Lanchester and John Schlunt from Teeter Architects to discuss the hydronic study on the science building.
Thank you, Ron. Good evening again. As previously discussed in the board meetings, we've talked about and addressed in the leaks in the Science Community Center. And one of the discussion pieces that we had is there are many water sources for this particular building, and most of them are holding well, other than the occasional normal routine of water failure that we see from time to time in most buildings. However, the HVAC water system seems to be giving us the brunt of the problems, and Jonathan and I are going to discuss those with you tonight and just briefly hit on the options and the recommendations. So Teeter, they're not architects, excuse me, they are architects, but they're just called Teeter. Teeter has performed a study in the science building to take a look at and identify what may be leaking inside of this building. And it's taken down to the hydronic systems for the HVAC system and the temperature that the water is moving through the system. So it's a very technical as we get into this explanation, but the objective of the study was to take a look at the leaks and the causes of the leaks in the particular building so that we might be able to solve it, and also to provide recommendations for the district. Jonathan, would you please talk about and share with the board the 3 options that were developed for this? And I'll advance the slide here. Okay, it doesn't like me. Maybe it likes you better.
I was using the arrow.
Thank you, sir. Okay, there we go.
So of the options, the piping, well, maybe first define the problem. The piping is the heating piping throughout the building. And there are three options that I can see to resolve the problem that is actually happening at the joint of the pipes. So where the two pipes join together is where I'm seeing the problems occur. To fix these problems, we can go with one option, which is to replace the joints with a new type of joint with modern technology. That joint is still what's referred to as a grooved joint, and it doesn't completely absolve the potential for this to happen again. So that's the first option. That option is approximately $1.12 million. The second option is actually to replace the pipe along with the coupling system with a welded system. It's a proven system, been used for many, many years, and has a much longer life expectancy than that first option. It does, however, come with a higher price tag of approximately 1.66 million. So it is more expensive, more invasive as well, but it gives you a longer term solution. The third option that I explored was actually a hybrid of the two, which is to do a permanent solution of number two, the long-term solution in the critical areas, which I identified as the museum on the first floor, and actually the shafts, which are concealed. And then performing the first option on the other areas. That option is closer to number one at 1.28 approximately. Yeah, that's the options. My recommendation is to pursue option two because of its longevity, because of its proven technology. That system has typically a 25 to 50-year life expectancy, whereas the other systems have potentials for failure because of the technology that's being used. So.
And at this time, the Central Services is reviewing options and seeking legal advice to explore the possibility of recouping these expenses. As you're very well aware, the district office building on the exterior had a failure, and we were able to negotiate that repair at no cost to the district, and it was quite extensive, that cost. Are there any questions?
I have questions. On the science building, the leak, first I want to tell you what someone told me. I don't know if it's true or false, but I'd like your opinion, is that I was told that the leaks were essentially caused because that building was designed to be like a hospital running 24/7, 365 days a year, and it's the shutting off, turning on that's causing the leaks. Is that correct or not?
So the central system that supplies that building also supplies Glacier Hall. And that system.
What also supplies what?
Glacier Hall, the building
Glacier
adjacent
Hall,
to it.
okay.
And that's the heat, that's where your boiler's at and everything else. That system is intended to cycle on and cycle off. A hospital runs 24/7. Glacier Hall was not designed, so Glacier Hall and the science building were two different designers. So the plant may have been designed one way, and those two may have been designed other ways, but doesn't necessarily mean it was designed to run 24/7. It's not really the intent. It's actually very energy inefficient to do that. These systems are designed to cycle on and off to meet the heating demand, electricity for the pumps, gas for the heating.
Okay.
But I would interject that when there were complaints about the leaks, and the then facilities director, Judy was not the director then, went to the architect and said, the building's leaking, when the plant's off, said, no, it's designed to operate 24/7, so keep the plant going and then you won't have leaks, and that's actually been true. But it's not necessarily cost-effective for a college to be running that building 24/7 when, we're not here on weekends, and it should be closed, during the late night hours and so forth.
Okay, so then what you're telling me, I was told, is essentially true.
That is what we were.
But, okay, so how does a mistake like that happen when it's a brand-new building and, on our agenda tonight, we have to approve the calendar, and it has that 4/10, 3 days off in the summer. It sounds like somebody goofed. Am I wrong in designing it to run that way?
You are not wrong. There's a failure somewhere in this building. Where the failure lies in which entity that put this building together is yet to be discovered. What we know at this point is we have identified what is causing the leak. And our next step, as I mentioned, was to seek legal counsel, but moreover, for my negotiating skills to come back into play, which is to get everybody back in the room and have these discussions. I've had them before in probably quite often over the last 10 years, and we've been quite effective. I don't know if I will be in this case. It's a very large sum of money, but we will go there and we will negotiate it hard for our constituency groups. That's important that we show that we've done that work and that we try to recoup these expenses as best we can.
Is the groove system a little more cutting edge than the welded pipe, or is it just a workmanship
So
issue,
groove
as best we know right now?
Groove systems are used commonly on fire mains, cold water systems. You'll see them everywhere.
Okay.
On heating water systems, they have not commonly been used really until the last 5 years. And this building is about 8 years old, at least from construction completion. And the reason for that is because the temperature threshold that the rubber gaskets can hold does not have any tolerance. And it was right at the limit of where that plant is designed to go. So you get into a technology issue of trying to pass one system that is actually quite cost effective and time efficient for the contractor to install. But it does have exposure in potential failures like this.
It's back to what Judy's saying. Okay, thank you.
One of the challenges that I do want to make the Board of Trustees aware of is that we do have a building that leaks. And we need to, however we move forward with this, we need to move forward with this quickly, because if that building goes down, which it has gone down before, then we're going to be experiencing those leaks. We need to call staff back quickly and try to alleviate anything that goes downstairs, because water goes to its lowest source and could damage any of the exhibits inside of the Great Valley Museum or future wood rot or anything else that may occur in the building. So it's important that we move quickly but accurately, because we don't want to put a fix in place that's going to not solve the problem. But by and large, we have some of these gaskets and unions that have so much decay around them that we're having problems torquing them and shutting them down. So it's a matter of time, on several of these, not a lot. There's over 200 in there, 200 of these
There's
units.
about 280.
About 280 of these units. So there's about 2 or 3 that are to this point, but we do need to solve this.
I may follow up. I just want to be clear, and you may have said it and I may have missed it, but currently, to avoid the leaking, it's running 24/7, 365.
That's
currently.
correct.
Okay. And then I have one more question about the Great Valley Nature Lab. The pad for the greenhouse was pointed out, and we were told that everything's ready for completion in February. Does that include the greenhouse?
Yes, the greenhouse right now is a little bit ahead of schedule. We've been discussing regularly with the vendor. He was a proprietary vendor of his greenhouse. They had, well, basically, the worst case is going to be the end of February, is what they're saying. But right now, we're ahead of that.
Okay, thank you. Great.
Judy, it sounds like you and your team and the experts understand the immediate emergency here. So we're putting our faith in you, as we should, to get this done. So thank you.
You're welcome. And I believe, Ron, you have Juniper still to present?
One more.
Okay.
And now it's state goes. So the Juniper building, you may recall, was originally slated to be part of the lower Manzanita and Pinion renovation that we did, but we couldn't afford it at that time, so we kind of set it back a little bit. There were cost savings, and like we have in most projects. So what we developed was a hybrid on this project, which basically didn't do any walls or new HVAC systems, new plumbing. It's carpet, it's ceiling, it's paint. It's a high technology type application. So it's turning in from a math building to now a high-tech building, entrepreneur, ITC, and multimedia. So it's in construction right now. As right now, it's costing $135,000, so it's fairly cheap. But it's going to look just like new when it's done. Not much to show during the construction because it's really all cosmetic. It's ceilings, walls, and finishing carpets, things like that. We are going to be putting in some high-tech audio-video systems like we have in some of the other classrooms, large screens like these for teaching stations. So it's going to be pretty functional. But that's it, and that one's due to be done next month, so it'll be ready for fall semester.
Any further questions for Kitchell? Well, thank you very much.
Thank you for your patience. Exit.
Okay, we'll move on now to item 6, action items on the consent agenda. And those items are listed as items 6.2 through 6.9. Trustee Martin has requested to pull item 6.4 for comments. So with the removal of 6.4, I'll entertain a motion to approve those other items as listed on the consent agenda.
I'll move that we accept the consent agenda as presented without any additions or corrections. And before that, I'd like to recognize the retirees. Florine Flores Carter with 18 years of service, Ronald McGuire with 27 years of service, Patrick Pimentel with 24 years of service, and Ada Trejo with 29.5 years of service. So with that, I'll make a motion that we accept the consent agenda presented without one item.
Got it. Thank you, Trustee Rojas. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Trustee Beggs. Any further questions or comments? Seeing or hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Move over now to Trustee Martin with respect to item D.
Technically, yes.
Mardini, 6.4.
Thank you, Chair Garrett. I'd like to give a little bit of explanation. 6.4 is the consent agenda on the out-of-state travel. One reason I want to pull it is that it doesn't need board approval. Everything's already been approved by the chancellor. So a vote is really unnecessary. But I'd like to have the opportunity to give a bit of background information. This was covered at one of our Columbia meetings, but I still think there may be a little confusion, so I would like to tell you from my point of view is that one of our board policies, last reviewed in 2004, requires that the board receive a monthly travel report, and the board was not receiving a travel report. When the board requested a travel report, it was explained to the board that the computer system that was being used didn't allow for a travel report that was comprehensible to the board. So we were told that, well, in a couple of years, we'll get you a travel report. And since it is in the board policies not set by this board, we requested to have some information at least. And the out-of-state travel has to be approved by, the chancellor. And so the chancellor's office makes a list of out-of-state travel. Apparently the other department, because of the way and I'm not a techie person, but the way it was set up, they could give us a travel report, but we couldn't figure out what it was saying. So the board wanted the information that we're entitled to by the policy, so we asked to have the board, have the out-of-state travel come to the board so we could see that, but we gave the chancellor, the appropriate direction that he has the right to approve anything that, on the out-of-state travel. And so I'm suggesting that the out-of-state travel become an information item in the idea of transparency. And so I also think that, I don't know when that 2 years will be up or when, soon, right? Okay, and my suggestion would be to the whole board is that once we can get a full travel report, then I would suggest that the board could go back to our previous board policy on travel, because we'd be getting the report that we haven't gotten for 14 years. And so I just want to, in real clarity, suggest that we not vote on this because it's all been pre-approved by the chancellor, and that it is a decision of the board to rely on the chancellor's approval of the out-of-state travel, and to reiterate the board's delegation of authority to the chancellor as the CEO of the district, and we respect our role in such matters. The most importantly, and we're doing this because these are accreditation standards, so we want to follow that. And so it is, if there is no objection from any board members or questions or comments, I would like to suggest that we continue seeing the out-of-state travel approved by the chancellor, but just as an information item. It'll just be like we get the grants information of what we have there. But once we can get a full report, then I recommend, with the board's approval, that we send that policy that we currently have, that the board approves out-of-state travel, back to the Policy and Procedure Committee, so we can change that and put it through the shared governance structure that we have to go back to our old policy. Are there any questions or comments by board members on that idea?
Good idea.
I'm in favor of that, although I think that it's listed on the agenda for tonight. We vote on it, and we just add in that from now on, we don't need it on there. It's an informational item.
We just need it as an information item.
So with that, entertain a motion to approve 6.4 with the motion will also read that going forward, this will be an information item only.
Because of
Yes,
they read.
for the reasons stated.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by trustee Beggs. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by trustee DeMartini. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Okay, now let Graciela, you got that? It's easy.
It's easy for you to say.
All right, we'll move on now to item 7, action items for discussion, 7.1, board policy, second reading. So I can turn this back over to trustee DeMartini.
Well, pardon me, did we miss? Well, we have 7.1 board policy, second reading. Well, basically, as I reported earlier, that the Policy and Procedure Committee was happy with what we did for the first reading and see no reason to change.
Okay.
And if no board member sees a need to change, then I would suggest that we approve these 3 policy revisions as printed in the agenda. I'll move that.
So that's your motion. Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Second by trustee Hallinan. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. We'll move on now to item 7.2, quarterly report on the district's financial condition. You've got 30 seconds. No, I'm just kidding.
I'll make it short. So we have before you tonight for approval the first of 4 quarterly reports for 2018-19 fiscal year. The time period is July 1st through September 30th, 2018, and this focuses only on the general unrestricted funds. So the format that we have on the first 2 pages is the state's format. So we'll just go over it very quickly. Section 1 provides a comparison between the adopted budget, annual current budget, and the projected actuals. And I'll just tell you at the first quarter, all of those are going to be the same because we're not that far into the year. And then you have the year-to-date actuals. So we've received approximately 17% of our revenues in the first quarter, and approximately, we've had approximately 22% of our expenditures. Moving down into the second section, we're reporting 16,542 FTES for the purposes of this report. Now, I will tell you that is for the purposes of this report. We need to have a broader discussion about how we respond to the student-centered funding formula and the need to start stepping down our FTES. And those discussions will start with the colleges later this month as we move towards filling out, completing the Form 320. So you'll be hearing more about that. In Section 3, our cash position is at approximately 27 million. And Section 4 is basically the agreements that the district has already made with CSEA and LTAC, with the exclusion of VPs and above. These represents those percentages and raise values for the next 3 years. So on the following pages, we're not indicating that we're having significant events at this time. So the very last page is much easier to read. So the only thing that I would point out is our percentage of the state revenue is up a little bit that we've gotten so far this year, so that's actually good. Our non-resident tuition is up, and that is due to a rate increase that was adopted, I believe, in, I want to say January, I could be wrong. CalSTRS on behalf is going to be 0 until the end of the year, and that's both on the revenue and the matching expenditure. And then our expenditures at all 3 institutions are pretty much in line, maybe a little bit higher than last year at this time, but that just indicates a slight increase perhaps in operating expenditures. So I think that is all that I have to go over unless there are specific questions.
Any questions for Susan? I would like to note that our total expenditures were 2.5% under budget, so you had anything to do with that? I'm sure you did. Thank you.
Well, we'll always take credit if we
There you
can,
go.
but
There
not
you go.
really.
That's what we like to hear.
Thank you.
Okay, the recommended action that the Board of Trustees conducts a public hearing to review the district's financial report for the quarter ending September 30th, 2018, and direct staff to submit a copy of the required report to the California Community College's Chancellor's Office. So with that, I will open the public hearing. Would anyone from the public like to comment on this item? Don't all rush the microphone. Okay. We'll close the public hearing, bring it back to the board for action. Is there a motion?
I move that we direct staff to file this with the Community College's Chancellor's Office.
A motion by trustee Hallinan. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by trustee Martin. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. We move on now to item 7.3, personnel negotiation reopeners, Yosemite Community College District and California School Employees Association, Chapter 420. Our Vice Chancellor of Human Resources.
Yeah, so just as a reminder, this is our, I guess you would call it the triennial opening of the entire contract. I know that CSCA gave us a heads up on 7 or so proposals, but we are all of the understanding that the entire contract language is open for review, and we wanted to start this process early in January. We used to have it flipped around where we would do the language later, but we want to get ahead of the curve and do all the language on the front end, and then when the budget information becomes available, get into the wages and benefit at that time.
Okay, any questions for the Vice Chancellor? Okay, the recommended action is that the Board of Trustees, A, we receive CSEA and YCCD's bargaining proposal reopeners as attached to the November 14th, 2018 agenda. B, schedule a public hearing on the proposals for December 12th, 2018. And C, refer the proposals to administrative staff for review. And with that, I'll entertain a motion. That's, yes, sir. All right, motion by trustee Rojas. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by trustee Viss. Okay, any further discussion? Seeing or hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. 7.4, academic calendar for 2019-2020. This is routine and customary business. The recommended action is that the Board of Trustees adopts the 2019-2020 academic calendar year for Columbia College and Modesto Junior College is attached to the November 14, 2018 agenda. Does anyone have any questions, comments, concerns? With that, I'll entertain a motion. So moved by trustee Rojas, our silent member at the end.
I think Lynn.
I'll second.
No, I'm going to let Lynn have it.
I'll second.
Second. We need to get these people that are going out, we need to get them involved, you know, get them on the record, get them on the record. All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carried. Okay, to the best part of the evening, because this is when we get to hear their parting words for all of time. But first, we'll hear from our student trustee who's remained quiet the whole evening down there.
Good evening, everyone. I wanted to start off by thanking trustees, excuse me, trustees Tom Halen, Lynn Martin, and Dom Biss for their service. Thank you. Since our last board meeting, I have attended monthly ASMJC Senate and special meetings. I volunteered at the Hispanic Education Conference as well as homecoming. I also had the opportunity of attending and presenting at the Ron Tingley naming ceremony. And last but not least, I was able to attend the ASMJC Town Hall. And I would also like to thank President Collins for making the time to answer any questions that the students may have had. Thank you.
Hey, any questions for our student trustee? All right, thank you very much. Have a happy holiday. Trustee Hallinan, your chance.
Wow, seems like I've been here before. With that,
How many years altogether, Tom?
20 years and 9 months.
Okay.
Yeah. So I want to thank the board for appointing me and giving me this last chance to serve. Can't say it's been the funnest 9 months of my career in YCCD, but hey, that's all right. Because I am feeling a lot of gratitude right now. I was looking down at Don, you know, my high school teacher, I got to serve on the board with him. I mean, how cool is that? I graduated from Oakdale in 79, 1980. I have Steve Collins as my speech teacher. Gave me the best public speaking advice I've ever received. He said, this will be the last time you have to hear it, Steve. He said, if you get nervous, look at them in the eye, look at their forehead, they will think you're looking them in the eye. Great advice. I use that in moot court. I use that in real court. So thank you, Steve. And just, you know, if it wasn't for this, you know, I came on with Abe and I'm real grateful. I was thinking about, every half hour I'm looking at the election results, right? I'm almost at 1 million votes, you guys. And that wouldn't have happened but for serving YCCD and given the opportunity to be here. So I'm just very, very grateful for that. And thank all of you and everybody, past and present. Congratulations to the new trustees. Margie, welcome. Nancy, my friend, congratulations. Very happy to see that. Hope I was able to help you out in Oakdale a little bit. Antonio, thank you for reaching out to me. Hope I was able to help you get here. I know you're all going to do a great job. It's going to be some challenging times. So I don't want to be too negative since I'm, you know, feeling so grateful for myself. But, you know, we're due for a downturn. We're 2 months late in having a downturn, and 2 years late in having a downturn in the economy. That's real. That's something you guys are going to have to deal with. We have a new funding formula. We don't know how that's going to work. So and I say this again with, I still love everybody. I was called some things this year I hadn't heard in the 20 years prior, but that's okay. But what I want to say is, and I say this coming from a good place, don't get lost. And we all have cultural bubbles. I work in a lot of different ones because I contract with different government organizations, but don't get lost in your cultural bubble. As I was speaking to the guy about getting potentially long-term care insurance, he said, you know, one thing about your district I noticed, nobody ever leaves. There's a reason for that. It's not such a bad place to be. So with that, thanks again, everybody.
Thank you, Tom. Hey, I forgot to mention the limited mic time, but go ahead, you know.
Don't worry, I'm not going to do that. I met with the Policy and Procedure Committee via telephone, and I also was on the phone in Texas with a special closed session meeting. And I also had my last meeting with President Shanatu, which was very wonderful. And 8 years ago, when I did win this election, I was shocked to find out that I was now a politician. So you go for it, Margie. And the other two new board members, congratulations, and you're in for a good ride.
Abe,
My turn?
your turn?
Leslie's turn.
No, we're gonna go with you.
Oh,
This is my last meeting as chair. I can say what I want now. Or not.
Darren, you did a great job. And I also want to thank Lynn and Tom and my good buddy here. He's the only one older than me. Not by much, though, huh, Don? 10 years, maybe. No. Oh, I attended the Ron Tinsley ceremonial of the new Veterans Facility and attended a special board meeting, and I was able to travel to Stockton to watch our Pirates defeat Delta by a 49-0 score. It was, so now they're going to travel without me to San Francisco City College to play for the Northern California Championship. So that's it.
And you were at the Hispanic Education
Oh,
Conference.
that's right. Yeah.
Right.
I was at the Hispanic Education Conference.
It's all right. We're watching out for you.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Don, I am going to give you a lot of time because you put in a lot of years, so you just take it from there, okay? You have family here. Would you like to introduce your family?
Yes, I have family here. There's my eldest daughter, Ann. Raise your hand, Ann. And my favorite daughter-in-law, Jeannie. She invites me over for dinner, and then she sends me home with dinner. Can't beat that. And my eldest son, Eric. After I got on this board with Tom, I asked him, did you learn anything in my class? And he said, I don't know. I was asleep most of the time. My family's association with MJC goes back into the 1930s. My parents were immigrants, and they were foreclosed off of their place in 1934, and they ended up on a little 2-acre ranch that my uncle helped them get over on Kansas Avenue. And they walked, neither had been to high school, and they walked to MJC, one and then the other, and took English and I don't know what else. My mother took typing and so on. So they really appreciated that opportunity because it launched them into a successful business. So I didn't do well in high school. I didn't go a lot because I stayed home and helped my dad in he was in the poultry business. And when you have livestock, it's 24/7, rain or shine. So we worked hard, and I ended up in the Harry Truman's police action in Korea. I didn't go to Korea. I went in the Air Force, and they tested me and found out I didn't know much, so they sent me to college. And from there, they sent me to Portland Air Force Base and put me in management analysis. And I wasn't there very long, and the major I was working for said, the guy in charge of Officer Space Action is going to retire, and you want that job. You think you can do that? Well, I had learned by then that if someone says, can you do that? The answer is yes. So I found out that I didn't know much about accounting, so I went over to Portland University and took accounting at night, and that began my association with night school. I survived and got out of the Air Force, and by that time I was married, and Eric was born. He was a little kid, and I didn't have a job, and I'd heard that you could go to MJC on a GI Bill, and they would pay you to go to school. So I went over to MJC and met with a guy named Tyrone in the ag department. Remember him? And he was a small, feisty guy. And so we talked, and he said, well, I can put you in this and that class. And he said, have you done your entrance exams? And I said, no. And he said, well, you have to do that. And I said, well, I'm not going to because I'll fail them, and then you'll put me in dumbbell classes, and they won't pay me to go there, so I'm not going to do that. So we sat there and glared at each other for a while, and he said, well, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I'm going home. And he says, sit down, and I'll put you in the classes. But he said, I'm going to be watching you, and you better not disappoint me. So I got religion, and I studied, and I was pleasantly surprised on report card day. Well, that incident right there launched me into education, because if he said, I'm not putting you in the classes, I'd have been gone, and I'd never gone to college. So I look back at that one instance by a MJC teacher that got me going in education. So I really, really appreciated MJC. So, well, I went on to school, ended up in Cal Poly. It took me 4 years to get through 2 years in Cal Poly. And I got out of Poly, and I wanted a farm, so I found a farm out on east of Waterford. It was run down 80 acres. And I started farming, did pretty good the first year, second year. Third year was a disaster, lost a bunch of money. Went to the bank, and they said, you're all done. Sell your ranch, bring it in, pay us. So I went home and told my wife, well, we're done. We're going to have to sell the ranch. I don't know what we're going to do. I'll find a job. She said, no, we're not going to do that. So I like it here. I like this house, and I like this place, and the kids are doing well in school. And you just go out and find a job. So I didn't know what to do. So I gathered up my transcripts and went over to Oakdale High School and threw them on the principal's desk. And I said, I need a job. Can you use me? He looked at me and said, yeah, I think I can. He said, what can you teach? So then I said one of the dumbest things I've ever said. I said, whatever you've got, I can teach it. I need a job. So he said, okay, we'll see. So I was the last one hired. So I had 4 different subjects, no teacher training, didn't know much about any of them. So he said, you have to go to school and get a credential. And I knew I had to go to school and study some history because I didn't know much about it, and I was teaching history. So I did that, and so launched a 20-year career in the classroom. I want to say that in all of this, I attended 10 different colleges. I added them up one time, and none of them